Welcome everybody to another weekly AMA with BrightID. Today's topic is Sybil resistance. And so we'll be talking about how BrightID approaches Sybil resistance and other interesting attempts at Sybil resistance that we've seen other places. So the thing that for me kind of prompted this was I was talking recently with the fraud detection team of Gitcoin, and they do a lot of work with Sybil detection and for those of you that don't know what a Sybil attack is where someone makes multiple accounts and undermines a system. They use it to kind of defeat the way the system is supposed to work by using multiple accounts. So with Gitcoin, for example, this would be a problem. This would threaten the way that the quadratic funding works, because the way that quadratic funding works is the match that you get is based on the number of donations you get. So if you get a lot of donations, you'll get good matching, but it's also takes into account the number of unique people that are donating to your project. So you could potentially game the system if you wanted, let's say that you had your own project and you were trying to steal some matching funds for your own project. If you divided yourself into 1,000 different entities and donated to your own like a little bit of money from each of those 1,000 entities to your own project, you could potentially get more back in matching funds than what you donated in, and you could steal money from the system. So Gitcoin has protections in place. One of the things that they use is BrightID. They have a bunch of other things that they do. So that got me thinking about it. They were talking about having like the analysis that they do be exportable, so that if you are, I guess the way I look at it is, if you're a good citizen on Gitcoin, maybe that you can carry that badge of awesomeness to other places. They can know, like, okay, yeah, this person is like they're not defrauding Gitcoin, so that gives them bonus points in our DAO or whatever. So you can carry it with you as like a credential. But anyways, they're also talking about like offering Sybil protection as a service. So I'm following along because that's kind of like what BrightID does. So I'm following along to see what they're doing and how they're offering that. But so far it's not very well developed yet, but that's something that they're working on. That's one of their initiatives. So does anybody so far have any questions about Sybil attacks, Sybil defense, anything in general? I thought I heard someone starting to talk.
Can you hear me?
Oh,
can someone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, someone can hear me, right?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, so far so good. I've understood what you said. I don't really have a problem with it, but today is my first day joining the meeting. I've never joined it. I've always been trying to join it, but you know, your timing, it's not it's always against my schedule. So I've been trying my best. So I decided to set an alarm today. I decided to set an alarm that I must join this meeting. Since when I attended the meeting for verification of BrightID last year, I couldn't do it. So I'm happy. Can someone hear me?
Yeah, so let me mention to you that this is not a connection making meeting.
Yeah. I know.
Okay.
I'm aware.
Yeah.
I'm
sorry
aware.
about
so
that.
This is what I'm saying. I'm saying that the connection meeting that I attended since last year, I didn't attend any meeting with Bright. So I said that I must make it a date to join your meeting today. So now your lectures was quite interesting, but please, my question is not in relation to what you taught today, because I quite understood what you said today very well. My question is, could you please refresh my memory on the use cases of Bright? Thank you. Although I know it's
Yeah,
for, okay, yeah, just speak.
sure.
Thank you, sir.
Happy to. Happy to.
Thank you, sir. I really
And other people can chime in too, because even though I'm one of the founders of BrightID, I did not envision all the different uses that people are coming up with for BrightID, and that's one of the nice things about having kind of a low-level platform is that people will come up with new ideas for new uses that you didn't even imagine, which is a good sign that we're doing something right. So when I first created BrightID, the problem that I was trying to solve was, what if you had something that you wanted to give away in an equal amount, and you wanted to spread it as widely as possible? So the thing that was on my mind was universal basic income. What if you wanted to give a global universal basic income? You didn't want to exclude anybody. How would you do something like that? And so my mind started thinking about that, and I started thinking about the problems of the Sybil attacks that we were talking about, which would threaten that from working properly. And so that was the main use case. So that one you understand, right? Were you about to say something? Okay, because I can mention a few more. So that's an really interesting.
I said I really understand. I just wanted to refresh my memory because I was lacking behind. So I needed to remind myself that this is the use case of BrightID, and it's kind of a reminder why I should note down the points that BrightID is for uniqueness, right? Test of uniqueness. Let me put it like that, right?
Yes, right. The fundamental thing is BrightID offers verification of human uniqueness.
Yes. Yeah, verification like test of uniqueness. Let's say you want to give out an airdrop in crypto, right? Now you want to give out an airdrop and you don't want people to spam the airdrop. There is kind of like, this is where BrightID come in, that one airdrop is meant for one person, irrespective of. That is the point, right?
Yeah, that's what we're trying to solve. And
thank you,
yeah. And it's that very kind of narrow use case that we're trying to solve. We're not trying to, like we talked about earlier before everybody came, we talked about Philip and Humpty and I were talking about like different sorts of identity solutions that go beyond what BrightID does. We were talking about ontology and Orange and the solutions that they're building for identity wallets. And so those go beyond BrightID. We want to keep with this very narrow focus, which is proving that a person is unique in the application that they're using. And then we also have other goals that go along with it. One of the things that's a very important goal that we've had from the beginning is to keep privacy. So you should not have to reveal things about yourself to get this stamp of uniqueness that you can use with applications. You should not have to do the sort of level of revealing information that you do to, let's say, get a passport for the government. We don't want to collect all that data. We don't want to collect biometrics. We don't think that any of that is actually helpful for this narrow solution that we're doing. We think that the most important factor is the people that know you. That's why it's called a social identity solution, is because the people that know you are the ones that are able to allow you to be verified. So that's what we're doing. You can imagine there's lots of other use cases for it, and people are discovering new use cases all the time. And I see Toby has had his hand up for a while, so I'm going to ask Toby to ask his question, please.
Okay, good evening, everybody. This evening in Nigeria. So my question is just that if I have like two mobile phones, or I need to participate in probably an ID hole or a kind of launchpad, and it has to involve BrightID, then how do I achieve that with two wallets? And that won't look as if I am trying to do anything fraudulent or dubious. So how can I work? How could that work out?
So let me try to demonstrate. This is going to be a little bit this is not going to be a full demonstration because I'm going to have to show it, like hold my phone up to here, but in the menu, so there's a menu right here, those 3 lines. If you go there, there is something called devices, and, and under devices, it'll show me which device I'm using. And then I can, and what I can do is I can get another device, and my other device, I can, let me back up one step here and show you. So under devices, I can hit this button. It says sync devices, and then it makes a QR code. And on my other device, this is what I scan. I scan this code. So on your other new device, what you do is there's an option when you very first install BrightID, there's an option that says import. And so you choose import, and then from import, it will ask you to scan. That's what you scan. And then it links your 2 devices. Yeah. And then it links those 2 devices. So now you have 2 devices, 1 BrightID, and that's totally fine.
All right. Okay. That solves my problem. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah. Thanks for thank you for the question.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So, going back to the, okay. So do we have, yes, someone's asking, I have the same problem, 2 phones. Is this new? Yes, it's new. That's a new feature since maybe just a couple weeks ago. So yeah, that's why you haven't heard of it yet. And I think we're still working on the documentation for it. So I don't even think that's in the, I don't even think it's in the user guide yet.
Yeah, it's a pretty new feature. There certainly could be still bugs with it. Yes, go ahead and just know that you're on the forefront of using new features. So there may be some issues, but please let us know in the Discord if you do run into issues, so we can make it better for the next people.
Yeah. So do we have any other questions from the people here? Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to confirm something. Does BrightID now, when you want to complete a transaction, can we use BrightID token as transaction fee?
No. So one of the things that BrightID is that we've tried to stay away from is actually dealing with money directly. So BrightID is not, it's not a crypto wallet. It can't hold money. And it shouldn't be used. So maybe in the future, it can be used to maybe protect or help to recover a wallet with money in it, but it's not usable for that yet. So what it can do is it can allow you to qualify to receive something like maybe an airdrop, or in the case of Mana, some recurring money, or maybe some money from a faucet. So it can allow you to receive funds, but it doesn't actually receive the funds. So it's not a wallet itself. Is that the answer to your question?
Yeah, sure. I've been clarified with that. Thank you so much.
Okay, it looks like Toby has another question. Go ahead, please, Toby.
Granny typed one first. So
sure.
Granny,
we're going to answer to Granny's question.
Yeah, Granny's original device exploded. He's wondering if he can get access. So if you set up social recovery, then absolutely it's easy to get that. If you didn't set up social recovery, then no, that's the only way to recover.
Yeah, so the battery exploding in the original device. So obviously that device-to-device transfer is not going to work for in that case. But social recovery is the right option to use there. Are you willing to let us know if you set up social recovery? Anyways, if you did, that's the answer. If you didn't set up social recovery, it's usually, hopefully you're pretty new, and that's why you didn't set up social recovery. If you just got started, maybe you've only made a couple connections, then just start over. Tell the people that you're reconnecting to, just let them know to mark the old account as duplicate so that they don't get confused. And then the old you will just kind of like, it stays in the graph, but it'll be permanently labeled as a duplicate, and so that your connections will know that the new you is the real you. Okay, so you did not set up social recovery. Okay, so that's what you need to do. Start over with a new account, reconnect to the same people that you connected to before. Let them know that your old account is a duplicate so they can mark it as a duplicate, and then just start making more connections. When you make this time around, once you make about 3 connections to people that you really know and trust, that you know are not going to steal your BrightID from you, then go ahead and mark them as recovery connections. You can actually see who you've set up. I'm not going to show it because this call is recorded and I don't really want everyone to know who my social recovery connections are, but there's in the menu, you can see there's a social recovery option. It says recovery connections, and you can see and change and update who your social recovery connections are. So definitely set it up next time.
The other person needs to have marked you as already known before you were able to mark them as a recovery connection.
Right, and that's a protection against making sure that people don't just pick the wrong people, because we don't want you should not pick people that you don't know well and really trust to be your social recovery connection. So let's go with Humpty. Okay, actually, you've got a follow-up question here. I opened my Mana account a few years ago on the old phone. I made my first connection on my new phone. How do I move my Mana coins? So that is a question for the Mana team. I know that they have a process for you to follow to get your old Mana coins. So you should be able to get your old Mana coins. We're going to go to Humpty's question, and then I see Toby has another question. So go ahead, Humpty.
Yeah, actually, what you were just mentioning now, for me, brought up an interesting question just in terms of identity. And I don't know if this is even something that's been considered. Obviously, this is all emergent, so if it hasn't, it's completely understandable. You mentioned identities that may have been lost would just continue to exist on the graph. And then that just reminded me, I hate to bring up Facebook, but when people pass away, Facebook has a way of what's the word they use? I forget the word they use, but it basically is a process that you can start to basically close that account where there's no possible people to access it and use it, but memorialize it. I think that's what they call it. I'm wondering, as we're developing decentralized identity, if there's a way to do one of two things in this case, if there's a way of memorializing identities, but for those that have been lost for other reasons that no one has reached out to memorialize them, to almost create some sort of decay mechanism where they just go away over time if they're not accessed. And I don't know if there's a value in it or not, but it's just something that came to my mind as you were discussing that.
Yeah, there is a value in that. So one of the things that you can already do is you can go to a connection and you can
mark them as deceased.
So you can remove a connection, and then so you can go to a connection and remove it. There's a button once you look at a connection screen, you can remove them. And one of the reasons you can choose for removing them is because they're deceased. That's a reason why you might remove someone, but that's not as far as for what BrightID is used for. That is more of just sort of like a keeping track of things, allowing people to keep track of that among themselves, because it's your social connections that are verifying you. But as far as apps go, what you said is what apps should do. That's an important reason why apps should have verifications expire, because if you get verified, and you being like a point in the graph or whatever, if you get verified and that verification lasts for 1 million years, then you could have weird things going on where someone decides, well, grandpa's dead, but we're going to keep his BrightID in the family and just keep collecting our Mana for the next 100 years, because we're just going to keep passing on his account from generation to generation or whatever. So by having verifications expire, you can avoid weird situations like that where And it also helps with things getting stolen. Like let's say that your account gets stolen, your BrightID account gets stolen, and you didn't have social recovery. So, Granny Crypto's account, her phone blew up, but let's say that instead of blowing up, that the phone got stolen and the social recovery wasn't set up. Then in that case, like, it's nice if the verifications expire, and then like Granny Crypto can go and get those verifications again. Whereas if the person who stole her phone, because everyone has marked that account as a duplicate now, that old account will not be able to get that verification again. So without allowing things to naturally expire, you run into like those sorts of problems. So it is important to have that happen. Let's go to Toby, and then we'll go to Alejandro.
Okay. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the question Omti asked. It really clear a part of the feeling I have about the deceased ones. So that's very good. Thank you very much, Omti. The question I just want to ask now, I don't know, it does not relate with the Sybil. So I don't know if I can go ahead. I'm wondering if BrightID is the owner or is the one behind Mana, because if we have Bright as a token, then we're having Mana as a token. What could be the reason for running two different tokens? What are the use cases? Are they different from each other? Then I also want to ask that now we claiming Mana, and I realize that Mana is built on another chain that is different from XDAI. So my question is this new chain the one BrightID is working on, and what is in store for the future concerning this chain?
Yeah, so your question is, you're noticing that there's a Bright token and there's a Mana token. And so there's different tokens that you can get by being BrightID verified. And what's the difference between all of them, and why are there multiple tokens? So with BrightID, we just wanted to provide a base layer that allowed projects that have a token to distribute them more equally, more evenly, more fairly. And they can use BrightID as a way to do that. And there's going to be lots of different tokens that do that. Mana does have some other sort of connections with BrightID, in that I guess the parent nonprofit or the sponsoring nonprofit corporation that launched Mana is also the same nonprofit corporation that sponsored BrightID, so that BrightID can be a nonprofit in the United States. So there is that connection. But BrightID does not have anything to say about how Mana runs its operations or how Mana decides its economics or anything like that. It just, all BrightID is doing is saying, we're going to help you to distribute Mana more fairly. And that's the end of it.
Okay, I see it. Okay, so which means there's a limit to what you can say, because I realized they are on different blockchain. It's not XDAI. I saw it EIDI. So
right.
I saw EID. So I was wondering why different chain. Maybe this is a new blockchain to tap into, and maybe there are a lot of projects that are going to be built on this blockchain. So is this something we can be looking forward to, like a brand new chain?
Yes.
So
I think that's right.
feeling.
Yeah, it's a newer chain than Gnosis chain, which used to be called XDAI chain. It's a newer chain. It is a chain that takes advantage of BrightID in the way that it's secured. So the way Gnosis chain is secured is there's proof of authority is what it's called. So there's a group of people that have publicly said, this is who we are, and we're protecting the network, and we create the blocks for the blockchain, and everyone knows who we are, so that if we do something bad, it hurts our reputation. So it's kind of proof of authority, proof of reputation. That's what secures the Gnosis chain. And right now, the ID chain uses the same sort of security method, but it has a roadmap in the future to allow each person in BrightID to have a delegated vote so that they can elect the validators. And so that's like it's a way to do things without needing, let's say, the amount of capital that you would need for proof of stake, but still allow it to be tied back to a scarce resource. And that scarce resource is people. Like, there's only a limited number of people on the planet, so there's a limited number of votes. If you misbehave with your vote on ID chain, you lose it for the rest of your life. So you may have heard that in proof of stake, if someone stakes some tokens and they misbehave in the proof of stake, they lose their tokens. With proof of proof of identity in an ID chain, if you misbehave with you lose your vote for the rest of your life. So it's a different security model, and it's meant to support it's a cheaper security model. So it's meant to support things like BrightID itself, which wants to be a large scale global app, and we can't, even though Gnosis chain is really cheap, we can't afford it. Like if BrightID became global scale, Gnosis, and it was on Gnosis chain, it wouldn't be cheap anymore. So we need a different blockchain. That's why ID chain exists. Other projects like Mana can come on there and use it. So other nonprofit projects, it makes sense for them to also be an ID chain. So I do think that there will be other projects coming and using ID chain.
All right. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. I will still go further into studying the chain. I will do my personal research about it. Yeah, well, I love that proof of authority and a big proof of stake. So I love that part about it. Thank you very much, Adam.
Yeah,
thank
you're
you very
welcome.
much.
Okay, Alejandro, please go ahead.
Sure. So I just wanted to add to what you were saying about the decay and the expiration. So I think that's also one of the things that I like about being able to issue credentials, verifiable credentials based on things like BrightID, because then that credential could have the expiration time. And you mentioned 2 use cases, one for the people that will pass the identity or it will get stolen. And there's also, a third with someone could make a profit out of building identities and then selling them, right? So definitely having the applications on some additional layer to expire on those verifications, it's key.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The last case you said, so the buying and selling of BrightIDs. So right now, if you were to buy a BrightID off of someone, and you knew that it was going to never expire, and you knew that this verification was going to get you rabbit hole and Gitcoin and all these other things for the rest of your life, now maybe you're willing to like go through the effort of trying to buy and pay for and bribe people to get their BrightID because it's worth a lot to you. And maybe an uneducated person is like, they may cause a lot of problems for themselves by selling their BrightID. But if they know that, okay, this verification is going to be replaced in a week, and you're not going to be able to, unless you're, if it's one that you bought, you're not going to be able to get re-verified, then because the person who sold it to you could just like mark it as a duplicate, then now that really hurts the ability for people to bribe other people or buy the BrightIDs. And so I do think that that's an important defense, like having verifications expire, having new, better verifications come out, those sorts of things makes it less likely for people to be buying and selling BrightIDs.
Let's say that while none of the verifications today like use time in their calculation, they certainly could. You could run one right now that looked at, hey, when's the last activity? And hey, if you haven't touched your BrightID in a year, this verification is just not valid anymore. That could be coded today.
Yeah, and also the newer so yeah, you could do that already today. You could add that customization. The blind signature, the V6 that we're encouraging everyone to use now, comes built in with a like a what do they call it? They don't call it expiration. There's another name for it, but it's basically the expiration. When you create the verification, you say like it's kind of like the renewal period. It's like it has to be renewed every week or every month, whatever is appropriate for your app. You set that. So we do encourage all new applications that are using BrightID to do that, and it happens. The renewal process happens automatically in most cases. So the user just has to, basically they don't have to do anything other than just open up the BrightID and it renews any verifications that they need to renew. So it's really easy for the users, and we encourage all apps to do that. It makes your app more secure if those verifications have to be renewed. I mean, and you've seen, like, we're used to this in real life. Hopefully it's a lot easier than getting the tabs on your car renewed to get your BrightID verification renewed. It should be a lot easier than that. Did you have more to say, Alejandro, or should I put your hand down?
Yeah, sorry, no, that's fine. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't see any more questions now, but if you have them, keep them coming. And I'm going to go back to the topic that I was talking about before, which is the Sybil resistance efforts of other applications. So I was talking about Gitcoin and what they do, and I thought I saw some people. I saw someone from Gitcoin come in here, and then I guess he left. Is anyone from the Gitcoin fraud detection team here by chance that can talk a little bit about that? Okay, well, I was hoping someone would show up and be able to talk about that, but I can say what I know about it. So a lot of effort goes in, and some of it's machine learning, some of it's like manually done by humans. To detect activities in Gitcoin grants that go against that undermine the way that they're supposed to work. And so what Gitcoin is thinking, they're saying, well, if we discover some bad actors in Gitcoin, can we export that information to other DAOs or back to BrightID or back to IDENA or back to, a proof of humanity, other things that might care about this? Can we export that back? And so we've had those discussions. And I had an interesting discussion about kind of like the self-sovereignty of doing that, because there's a couple ways to look at it. One is kind of the big brother way, I guess you could say, because the government does this kind of stuff. Like, governments do this. If you've committed a crime, they will keep a record of that, and they'll keep track of you. Like, they have ways of keeping track of you, and like keeping track of bad actors. And so you could say, well, should Gitcoin be the big brother of Web3, and is that the product that they're exporting? And then another way to look at it is, well, let's flip it around, and instead of looking at, okay, tracking the bad actors as they move through the greater ecosystem, what if we flip it around and make it self-sovereign and say, okay, if you're a good actor, so you haven't gotten on our bad list, you haven't done any of the things to get on our bad list, you're a good actor in Gitcoin, and you have a history and you have a record of being a good actor for some period of time, can you export that and use it in other places? Can that be a soul-bound badge that you can carry around with you and use in other DAOs, maybe you even use as part of different BrightID verifications? Or is that something that can travel with you? And I think that's really interesting. And I hope that Gitcoin pursues that. And I hope they do it in that way rather than the first way, because that way allows, it's kind of like opt-in. If you say, well, I don't really believe in the privacy of this, like it's giving away too much. I don't even want people to know that I ever used Gitcoin. Like I want to be a completely anonymous donor. So I don't want this badge. Gitcoin can't force that badge on you and say like, okay, this good citizen Gitcoin badge is attached to your ETH address and you can never get rid of it and it's going to follow you around everywhere. They can't do that. And then it becomes self-sovereign. So to me, that's a better approach. That's kind of like the freedom approach, the privacy approach, it fits with the kind of the ideals of the Web3 space. So I hope we go in that direction as far as Gitcoin, and being able to export that useful information. And I hope that we can also educate people so that when you're deciding what soul-bound credentials to accept, that people consider the privacy risks. Because maybe it's okay, maybe you're fine with accepting like a bunch of different badges that say that you're a cool person on all these different platforms, and maybe everybody knows who you are and you don't mind keeping them all in one place. But you should have the option of not accepting them, keeping them in different places, not having them linked. You should have a bunch of different options to preserve your privacy, and people should be educated about privacy risks that come with those. So anyways, that's kind of the world that I dream of. And the opposite of that is like where you go to a website that says, to use this website, you must enter your social security number. And then so you give them your social security number, now you're stuck, because now you can never get away from that. And if it's leaked, which often happens with these centralized systems, then now, attackers have linked a bunch of information to your social security number, and they can potentially steal your identity in other places and do bad things. So this is, those are the kind of the two worlds, and we want the other world. Okay, so Devin X, you could pre-select in the app which artifacts you want to share. Exactly, yep. For example, only sharing your age verification if you're at a bar, but your contribution history with DAOs to do work. Yeah, so one of the things that we were talking about with Humpty, who is he still here? Did he just barely leave? Oh, there you are. Okay, and you got your hand up too. Okay, cool. Yeah, one of the things that we were talking about is exactly this, because we had this discussion because Humpty wanted to know, he's like, okay, at Orange Ontology, we use, we use decentralized identifiers, the W3C standard, and we use verifiable credentials, but then we also allow people to export their reputation as an NFT. So we use both. And we were talking about kind of like the advantages and disadvantages of both, and how NFT privacy is just not up to the level that you can achieve with decentralized identifiers. So Humpty's got his hand up. So please talk more about whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, thanks. So you mentioned something that similar to you is important to me, and that is, first of all, being aware that, blockchain is probably not the most private way to interact, because there's a ledger of everything, right? Like your transactions and your interactions with protocols, all of your activity is verifiable on chain. So like you, that is why I'm a big proponent for DIDs and VCs, because they by nature are private and allow for private interactions, private verification and credentialing. And it's, the reason why, with the technology that we've built over at Ontology, and even through an extension with Orange, we are leveraging or building with that in mind, in terms of building ways for individuals to not just own their identity, but own their reputation and open up new opportunities, but still doing it in a way that remains private and provides a user agency for creating that reputation, right? For minting that reputation. So yeah, I think we're at an interesting time, I think, because we what we were talking about earlier, I feel that while DIDs and VCs have been around for some time, the maturity of the ecosystem hasn't necessitated the use of them. You know, I think at this point, a lot of us have been very happy being degenerates in this space. And, you know, and some of our own PSYOPs, I think, are proof of that in terms of how we aren't very mindful of, you know, good wallet practices, et cetera. But, you know, as I feel like we are building out new systems with the technology, the blockchain technology, like DAOs, for instance, there is this like human need for wanting to leverage some of these things like reputation, and doing so in a way that allows for people to remain as private as possible. And so doing that with technologies like DIDs and VCs and using BrightID, I think that for me, I think that we're reaching a point in the development of Web3 where we're going to start seeing not just a need, but a growing demand for it as well. And I think we've already heard some of it from the communities, why I think we're seeing the development of so many really interesting applications that allow for people to own that identity, right? And to measure that reputation and to create better onboarding and incentives for these individuals across, you know, whatever they want to participate in.
Yeah, I had a question about the reputation NFT that I didn't get to ask before, which is, does that, is that, so you mentioned that it was a special kind of NFT in that it was non-transferable. Is it special in any other ways? So the other way that I'm specifically thinking of that might be nice is, let's say that you lose access to the wallet. Is that NFT like recoverable in some way using your DID?
Yeah.
Oh, it is. Okay, I see
So,
you nodding. That's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so-
I want to explore that some more.
Yeah. So DIDs, I mean, you know, that's what's really cool about them, right? It's you can transfer the identities from all of these binded wallets. You can recover them, if you will, and being able to recover assets, I think, is one of the interesting aspects of it. The other thing that we are exploring, I'm not sure if it's usable yet, but is a decay mechanism for that reputation too. So there should be a decay to that reputation. I mean, it makes sense. You could be active, you know, all of, you know, January through June, but should you still have the same opportunities, you know, in December when you haven't been active for the last 6 months, you know, as someone who has? So that, you know, with reputation, I think that that's another kind of interesting complexity or nuance of it to explore, which I think, you know, well, for us, it makes sense. So we've definitely internally discussed implementing that as well.
Yeah, and that, to me, that works better with I think people are still trying to figure out how to do that kind of stuff with NFTs. But yeah, because I think some people see NFTs as kind of like the path of least resistance, but that stuff is definitely easier to do with DIDs and VCs, to allow the issuer to say like, okay, I'm making an update to this credential. And like making an update to an NFT is different. Like you can't really do it on chain. It's weird. And the other thing that we mentioned before this call started was we were talking about how like people who are doing soulbound NFTs are now saying, well, how do I make my soulbound NFT interoperable between a bunch of different chains? It's like, well, you need something off chain to do that. And it's like, well, DIDs and VCs already know how to do this. So yeah, I mean, there's certainly room for and demand, like you said, probably demand for an off-chain solution. And that's what DIDs and VCs have been like working towards for years now, is this off-chain solution. So let's go to Alejandro. How's his hand up? Go for it.
Yes, no, I think we're on the same page. So I just wanted to add a little bit of color to use case for DAOs. And I think there, DIDs and VCs are going to be very powerful, because right now, for a DAO, you can only, and like if you're onboarding a member to your DAO, the only thing you can verify is that they have money, or that they have, you know, some kind of NFT attached to them that is, as you also said, is not private. So there are many things about a person that you would like to know before you add it to a DAO, before you hand them over some decisions. Maybe you want to know if they have some specific skills or legal age or something. So those attributes are private, and you don't want them on chain, and you want a way to add those as filters for members in your DAO. So that's also going to be a very powerful use case.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. I think so. I'm not afraid. Some people are like, man, why are we encouraging people to abuse NFTs to store credentials? And the way I think of it is, you know, let's let people use NFTs, and we will very quickly start to realize the limitations. I mean, we're already running into them. We know that blockchains, we don't have on-chain the ability to do zero knowledge proofs completely on-chain. We don't have the ability to do cross-chain stuff completely. Obviously, that's not completely on one chain. And so we have some of these limitations. And as soon as people hit those limitations, they're going to start looking for other solutions. So I think the newfound like this newfound interest that probably started with Vitalik's post on soulbound NFTs. This newfound interest is good. I think it's ultimately good for the DID and VC efforts as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so I think we're coming close to the time. May we have time for one more question, and then we'll have to close it up.
I just wanted to add one thing to what you said there, Adam, and that is, I think with each new challenge, with each new thing that, oh, Heavenly Father, Vitalik Buterin speaks and writes, you know, I think that it really challenges us to explore new ways of using the technology. It doesn't mean that it's the right way, but it definitely opens up kind of new experimentation, which I think this is really a lot of what we're doing today. We're kind of experimenting with the technology to see kind of what are some of the opportunities that it presents, but also some of the maybe the limitations, to the point that we're making about NFTs, and, you know, ways to use the technology in ways that it benefits people, while not necessarily limiting us or becoming like the one thing solves everything, because obviously blockchain isn't for everything, and that's fine. But, you know, I think that's what personally inspires me, and I'm always excited for. It's like each thing I think is opening up new challenges, and you see individuals like Alejandro starting to build products like Crebit. So yeah, that's really exciting. So yeah, and I always really pumped to be here at these calls. I know I'm not here as often as I would like to be, but thank you and Philip for leading these discussions consistently.
Yeah, and thanks for being here extra long. There was a confusion. So I think our Twitter said one time and our Discord said another time. So you've been here for 2 hours. So thanks for being here for so long. And oh, Devin, did you have something else? You popped on your video for a minute. Did you have something you wanted to ask?
Yeah, if it's not too much to tack on to the,
that's totally fine.
the back end here. I was just hoping you would touch a little bit on some of the differences between BrightID and some of the other DIDs. It's a little bit of a newbie question,
yeah,
but just to kind of a high points.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's a great question. So the way that I look at BrightID, like I said before, when I was talking about like why we didn't become a bigger solution that included some of the things that Alejandro and Humpty are working on, is because we want to keep this very narrow focus of just proving uniqueness. So we didn't see a need to assign to like manage DIDs for all of our users. So we didn't want to have to like create DID documents and become what they call a DID resolver for all of our users. That's kind of like a too heavy of a solution. But what we do want to do is this. We want, and this is something that we're working with Orange to do. They were the first ones to really request it, and it's something that we definitely want to do, is to have BrightID nodes, because DIDs, decentralized identifiers, sorry, don't just have to be people, they can be entities as well. So what we want to do is we want to have each BrightID node to register its own DID, its own decentralized identifier, and then be able to issue verifiable credentials in a format that that things like the ONT identity wallet and Crebit that they understand it, that they accept, and that way you can that verification becomes more portable. So you can take it and have it in your identity wallet. So you yourself, you create your DID outside of BrightID, and then you get this verifiable credential saying that you're verified under, certain verification schemes for certain apps. Their verifiable credentials can have like bunches of different levels to them. So you'll probably be getting more than one verifiable credential from BrightID node into your identity wallet that you can then use in the appropriate place. Then it becomes under your control. You got that from the BrightID node. That's like the source of authority. People can use a tool like Crebit to make sure that that your credential is actually legitimate, and then you can go use that wherever you need to use it. So you're in control. So I think that's the best solution. That allows us to keep our narrow focus, and it's really not that much extra effort for us to support whatever standards we need. Like the verifications that we issue now, we already support 3 different standards, and we're willing to support more. Like we're willing to, like if Crebit has some specific needs that we should support, we can do that. If Orange has specific, like a specific format that they want, we can support that. So that's definitely something BrightID can do. So we're always supporting more formats. Like we added the Ethereum format. When we first launched, we didn't have it. We added that so that now you can import and that we've had this for a long time, but at the beginning we didn't have it. You can import your verifications directly into a smart contract. A lot of apps are using that. So it just makes sense, like as standards evolve and as use cases evolve, that we support lots of new formats for the verifications that our nodes put out.
Seems like it's better for security that way too, that you're not handling all those individuals.
Right. Yeah.
You're
We don't.
The uniqueness. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The nodes, like if someone breaks into a node right now, let's say a BrightID node is compromised, there's just not that much on there that they can do. Like there's just not that much information. There's not, like BrightID nodes just don't do a whole lot. And that's kind of like the way we want it to be.
Cool. Awesome.
All right. Thanks for the excellent questions, everybody. And thanks for coming. Hope to see you next week.
Folks.
Thanks, guys. Bye.